Hello, this is Captain Aquarius, coming to you and doing business again as Dan First with another of the 15-minute videos on the momentous, transformative lunations of 2016 and soon to come with more in 2017. A lunation, as you know, is one of the two major phases in the lunar cycle. The black moon, which comes when the moon and the sun are in exact conjunction with each other during the moon's window of invisibility, to be followed soon by the new moon, that is, the moment 2 days later when the first thin cup-like crescent of the moon finally reappears in the sky. And the other lunation is, of course, the full moon, like the one we are going to talk about today. This is the full moon, which comes on December the 13th in areas that are in the Americas, that is west of Greenwich in England, and the full moon will be exact on December 14th in Europe and Asia, areas east of Greenwich. This chart that you see here is cast for 6:06 p.m. on December 13th of 2016 at the Standing Rock Indian Reservation in North Dakota. Obviously a subject of very high importance and interest to us now because of what has recently happened in a temporary suspension ordered by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the construction of the pipeline that has been a subject of bitter controversy for months and months. An apparent victory has been won by those people who wish to stop the pipeline, but it cannot be regarded as a decisive victory by any means, because the capitalists who wish to build this thing are as relentless as telemarketers with a fever. They will be back. They will find their way to push their agenda again and again and again, and therefore a process of continual communal activism, organization, consciousness raising, and continual involvement and reporting will be required here. How is this reflected in the chart that we see right here? It is cast in the design that is called a European hub traditional, because, as you can see here, the configuration of this chart has very, very unequal allotments of space among the different houses here. Some of them being exceedingly narrow as only 17 degrees, others being very wide. So this kind of chart not only shows the actual configuration of the different houses on the wheel, but it is more accurate in showing the actual angles of relationship in the key players that we look at here. Which are the ones that we focus on most now? Well, look at the sun in the sixth house of health and service relationships in conjunction with the planet Saturn. That is the principle of limitation, the grounding of solid practical reality in the earth plane. When Saturn is on his game, he represents the ability to focus in very intense concentrations of disciplined energy for the service of important goals. When he is not on his game, that is, when he is afflicted by other planets, as he is here, then what we notice with Saturn instead is a tendency to dig in with very high resistance to become the immovable object who refuses to compromise, to listen, or to accept what anybody else intends. Why is it that Saturn is afflicted in this chart? Well, for one thing, we notice and we can see clearly why this is the chart of a full moon, because the moon in the sign of Gemini in the 12th house is exactly opposite to the sun's position, and thereby is in opposition to Saturn too. The other piece, however, of the stress and difficulty that is present here is the planet Chiron the Healer, whom we see up in the 10th house of the chart. resembling the letter K in the sign of Pisces. Notice that he is in a 90-degree angle to the other players that we have looked at so far. This alignment with the Sun and Saturn on one side, opposite to the Moon on the other, and with Chiron at a 90-degree angle to both of these positions, is called a T-square. This is, by its nature, an angle of disharmonious tension, in which, unlike the angle, let's say, of an opposition only by itself, which is an angle of harmonious tension, tends instead to be a way in which people are refusing to get along, they are refusing to accept the arrival of necessary changes, they do not want to accept the energy of leverage, which is now in effect to help promote changes that are in many cases now long overdue and must now be put into effect. The practical effect of this T-square, then, requires a better understanding of the nature of Chiron the Healer. He is often called the wounded healer because of his identification with the famous figure in Greek mythology who was brilliant at healing everyone but himself, and who thereby was the symbol and the expression of the many people we know. You may in fact be one of them yourself, who may be able to help bring about useful and necessary changes for the better in the other lives they touch, but who indeed are incapable, it seems, of healing their own wound, whatever it is. And so we begin to look a little more closely at who Chiron is and what he represents. His energy can be said to flow in two different directions, outward and inward. When it is flowing outward, the energy of Chiron the Healer is directed as a medicinal force in the service of other lives, in whom Chiron then intends, in cooperation with the healing practitioner, to bring about a necessary change in the life of another person who is being served here. When the energy is going inward, which is indeed far more universal and important, because most of us are not in fact healing practitioners in literal terms, but all of us are people who are carrying wounds in some way, then the emphasis shifts toward the recognition and the working out and resolution of our own wound, whatever it is. The typical chironic wounds are naturally the wound of the missing love relationship, as all of us wish to love and be loved, and the absence of relationship or the pain of broken relationship will naturally be very keenly felt. Another one very commonly felt right now is the wound of the undiscovered purpose and the underutilized gift in people who are often asking themselves, asking others, what am I supposed to be doing? Either they don't know this and they are looking for their creative direction, or what is often more exasperating, they do know it, but they don't seem to be able to activate themselves toward going for it with resolution and courage. When Saturn and Chiron are in the 90-degree angle as they are here, what we are seeing is an attempt on one side to solve and heal and bring about the resolution of old wounds, and on the other side there is the determination to stick in the mud, to remain firmly entrenched in one's position, not to give an inch. And this is why, you see, the period of time that now begins with this full moon extends through the next black moon at the end of December, and extends as well to the energy of the extremely powerful full moon on January 12th, the last lunation that comes before the American presidential inauguration, is in fact a process of people doing whatever they can either to shift things in the direction of useful, necessary, and salubrious change, or to block change from happening at all. And that's why the tension that is present now, you see, is very often hidden. We notice this, in fact, among other things, in the way that the Gemini moon is hidden in the 12th house of secrets and shadows. And therefore we can infer that even though, of course, there is active communication going on all the time, or at least there is a lot of talking, whether communication is occurring or not. But the important thing right now is the covert arrangements, alignments, bargaining, horse trading, everything else that is going on the eve of December the 13th, which is in fact the date by which challenges to the voting counts in different swing states in the American election must be presented and certified a week before the Electoral College actually casts its formal vote on December 20th. That's why there is an enormous amount of covert negotiating, horse trading, and communicating going on right now. There are other things in this chart which are also notable. However, we notice that the moon there at 22 degrees of Gemini in the 12th house is in a wonderful 120-degree trine with Mars, the warrior, in the sign of Aquarius in the 9th house. The significance of this is obvious to us, I believe, in the way that one thing that helped to solidify the position of the people protesting at the Standing Rock Reservation was that literally thousands of American military veterans all converged on that site to protect the protesters from police who are armed to the teeth and to demonstrate their solidarity with these people. This is an enormously important event, and it indicates, you see, that we may be at a shifting point whereby people are no longer angling mainly for only the advantageous public relations position of presenting the illusion, the spin, the scam, whatever it is. We can see this also there in the 9th house with the way that Neptune and the moon's node, the upside-down horseshoe to the right of it, are gradually moving apart from each other. And by January of 2017, these two will no longer be in relationship at all, and therefore we will be beyond the phase in which we have recently seen the collapse, the withering away of so many relationships, now that lies and secrets which had been buried for so long have now emerged and have had their practical result in damaging so many relationships. We are entering the year of Saturn square to Chiron, as Saturn in his 29-year orbit moves more rapidly than Chiron in his 50-year orbit. Saturn will inevitably come into an exact 90-degree square alignment with Chiron. And as these two planets both move forward and retrograde, they will remain in this 90-degree square for much of the year. It therefore is going to be a time in which we witness this familiar tension between those who are working very actively to bring about something new and necessary, the new and necessary communal environmental activism on one side, or whether it is the new and equally necessary corporate fascist changes that are being brought about already by the new Trump administration. Both of these are in effect, and at the same time, there will be increasing resistance from those who refuse to accept and honor change of any kind. The theme is underscored by Uranus, the bringer of change, in the sign of Aries, in the 11th house of communal and social activism, versus Jupiter, the planet of the institutional power and the money, down in the 5th house of creativity in the chart. Therefore, it is a time when we are being called upon to coalesce our energies in the service of our most enlightened communal goals and our unstoppable freedom.